So for full disclosure here, I'm not an AI expert, and I also don't really even consider myself to be a cybersecurity expert. But nevertheless, I've been tasked with building out the collaborators' ability to assess levels of cyber risks that are faced by our current and prospective commercial cyber insurance clients. And I'm using some AI techniques to help me achieve this. So today I want to share one of the initiatives that we're working on and hopefully try and drum up some interest in collaboration. So just a bit of an outline of the rest of my talk. My old PhD supervisor used to always say that whenever you're giving a talk, you tell people what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So here it is. First, I'm going to go over just cyber risk in general from an insurer's perspective. Then I'll talk about challenges associated with the deficiency of data we have, but at the same time, we've got a bit of a wealth of expert opinion that's available to us. And then I'm going to go into an old school kind of AI technique that can be used to model expert opinion. Talk a bit about what a collaboration process might look like for modeling expert opinion and the expected outcome of that process, benefits of collaboration, and then beg for some help. Let me see here. Cyber insurance is it's a relatively new insurance product. It provides both insurance as well as risk management services against any losses that may result when an insured engages in any sort of electronic activities. So it's a type of insurance that can cover losses to either consumers of technology services or products, or businesses that are using or providing technology services or products, such as selling things on the internet, collecting data within its internal electronic network. And so for the rest of this talk, I'm going to be focusing on business cyber insurance customers and not any sort of personal lines, personal cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is still not purchased by most businesses. I think the last statistic that I saw was 15% of North American businesses have any form of cybersecurity insurance coverage. But at the same time, we're seeing at collaborators, and I think all the other Canadian insurers are seeing exponential growth, like literally exponential growth over the last several years. So it's really expanding, and we expect it to keep expanding. To the point where maybe someday even auto insurance becomes cyber insurance. As vehicles become smart vehicles, as homes become more smart homes, there's cyber insurance is just it's going to worm its way into all other lines of insurance. At least by insurers, it's considered to be an important part of an organization's cyber risk management strategy. The idea being that any risks that can't be eliminated should be insured. And so cyber risk insurance covers things like forensic notification or forensic costs, notification costs, and liability costs associated when a data breach has occurred, digital asset losses, business interruption expenses, cyber extortion resolution, whether that means paying a ransom or maybe not. We'll help you figure that out. Or also potentially property damage or bodily injury associated with a cyber incident that it's becoming more of a big deal with the Internet of Things and cyber attacks that can cause physical damage, and also potentially industry fines. So we're offering this, this comprehensive cyber insurance product or set of coverages. So, what do we need? What do I need as an employee of an insurance company? What do I need to be able to estimate in order to be able to sell that product. And so what it is we need to estimate frequency and severity of cyber incidents, the expected frequency and expected severity of cyber incidents for an organization, and the likely coverages that might be triggered if there were to be an incident. And the challenging piece here, and this is key, is we need to be able to make these estimates primarily using externally available information about the organization, or information that can be readily and easily provided by a representative of the organization, without conducting any sort of like comprehensive security audit. And in the same way as for life insurance, you're not going to give if you want to buy life insurance, you're not going to give your DNA sample to life insurer. Companies are not going to want to give like all their really extremely detailed cybersecurity information, internal stuff to their cyber insurer. So we're under enormous pressure to provide a risk assessment and insurance quote while asking as few questions to the client as possible. We're really talking like a one-pager questionnaire, maybe two if we can get away with it, because otherwise we'll lose business to our competitors that are asking fewer questions before giving coverage. So ultimately, we need to do the best we can at estimating a level of cybersecurity risk faced by an organization based on general, externally available organization characteristics that are easily accessible. That's a really big challenge. And the limited organization data that we have access to estimate cybersecurity risk is also, it's just one half of the data challenge. The other half is the lack of access to data about cybersecurity incidents that have happened in the past and what the impacts or losses associated with those incidents have been. So we don't know how expensive, what happens when an incident happens. A lot of times it's hard to get your hands on that kind of data. So I've got a figure here that was made by Deloitte. Sorry, some of the colors didn't kind of work out there. But it's about I'll go through it. It's about the negative feedback loop that's produced by a lack of cyber loss data. So if we start at the top circle at the top of the diagram there, it says that because cyber risk insurance is new, insurers haven't collected a bunch of their own loss data on their own. So they need to look externally for cyber loss data. But then a lot of cyber incidents are never reported publicly. And the kinds of incidents that are reported publicly might be very different from the kind of incidents that aren't reported publicly. So the externally available historical loss data aren't really all that great to use either. And now add to this that cyber attacks are constantly evolving, so the kinds of things that were associated with higher risk of cyber incident in the past may not be reflective of the factors associated with high cyber risk in the future. And then, so what happens is these external data insufficiencies, they undermine the insurer's confidence in their own underwriting and pricing teams. So the result of that being that the insurers tend to offer coverages that have really low coverage limits and lots of exclusions to play it safe on the insurer's end. So that's something that unfortunately we have to do to make sure that we don't go bankrupt offering cyber insurance at cooperators, and I think it's true of other Canadian cyber insurance companies as well. They're really conservative limits. And then this results in businesses doubting the value of buying cyber insurance, which lowers the growth rate of the cyber book. And then a slowly growing cyber book means ongoing low access to cyber loss data, and the vicious cycle continues there. So it's just a really big data deficiency challenge that we have. So can we fix this cycle by sharing data? And I wish, I think, is the answer. Data sharing it's great. I'm a huge advocate of open data in general. I do believe that if companies contributed toward a shared database of cybersecurity practices and incidents, it would greatly improve our ability to evaluate cyber risk. And I'm also really excited to see the results of the Canadian survey of cybersecurity and cybercrime that StatsCan is working on. But unfortunately, I think any kind of voluntary security practice and incident database. And I just want to interrupt here. When I say, I just want to make sure I'm defining what I mean when I say incidents. So when I say incident, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about a successful. There's been a threat, and it's a successful threat that's caused a compromise that results in a loss. That's what I mean when I say an incident. So I'm looking for voluntary disclosure of incidents in that sense. So I think any kind of voluntary incident database is ultimately going to be doomed to failure, unfortunately. I think every company is going to want to know about other companies' security practices and incidents, but they'll be extremely reluctant to share their own data, fearing that the damage of sharing their own info could be worse than the benefits of knowing other companies' info. And the same goes for the sharing of incident data, even if it's anonymized among insurance companies. Each insurer will want access to the loss data of their competitors, but they won't want to share their own loss data. And Canadian insurance, just as an example, like Canadian insurance companies, they used to share more commercial claims data, commercial property claims data. But what's happened is there's been a general trend of insurance companies pulling out of these data sharing agreements, especially some of the larger insurers, because what the larger insurers will see is that their large book of business really year over year, it ends up being very consistent with the results of the overall Canadian data, and they say, okay, well, we got a big enough portfolio, we don't need to be a part of the data sharing agreement anymore, so they pull out, and then if the big companies pull out, then the data shared among the smaller companies becomes less credible, and then the whole agreement just falls apart. So. What's the solution then? So I won't say it's the solution, but what's another possibility? So while I think companies will be reluctant to share data, I do believe they're much more open to sharing expert opinion. I'm sharing my expert opinion with you right now. You're all here. You're talking with each other. Expert opinion is being shared. Because expert opinion also is, because it's, well, hopefully it's based on data. From the perspective of each expert's organization or area of expertise. That means that it should be possible to aggregate expert opinion to produce some of the same conclusions that we might be able to reach from models that are based on the data that we can't get access to. But there are some hurdles that would need to be overcome before we can make better use of expert opinions for estimating cyber risks. First being that experts have relatively few opportunities to share their opinions in interactive ways. We see a lot of companies just submitting reports online, and that's a one-way expert opinion sharing. It's not interactive. There's events like this, they're interactive, it's great, but they don't happen very often. Another one being experts don't use consistent terminology when they're discussing cybersecurity risks. I'm sure I'm probably using some different language than maybe what you guys talk about when you're talking about cybersecurity. And then also experts have different desired outcomes or goals when they're sharing their expertise. So how can we address some of those concerns? I think so. This is where AI comes in. This is where we can leverage the power of artificial intelligence. But I'm not talking about the sexy, modern, sophisticated, deep learning artificial neural networks that find hidden patterns and make predictions from big data that mere humans are incapable of producing. I'm talking about 1980s era artificial intelligence aimed at using a computer to mimic the reasoning process of human experts. So that image there is just a Lisp machine that was used as a platform for AI expert systems that were popular in the 1980s. So the idea behind those systems was right there. In this form of AI was to ask experts how they go about making a certain kind of decision or assessment. And then this would be translated into a set of logical rules that would then be coded into a machine, which could reproduce the decision-making or assessment process based on those logical rules. So this form of AI, it fell out of fashion toward the end of the 1980s, along with general decreased commercial interest in AI at the end of the 80s. So one reason for this was the experts are a scarce resource in companies, and getting many experts together to work through all the details of their logical reasoning process was difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. And then, so then by the time that interest in AI picked up again at the end of the 1990s, there was more focus on using data sets as the primary inputs to AI rather than expert opinions due to improvements in data storage, processing, and analysis. And that because AI models based on data were starting to be able to outperform experts at certain tasks. And so that set the bar higher for AI. Instead of the goal being just to mimic human experts, the goal was now for AI to be better than a human expert. And so knowledge engineering-based AI techniques never really gained their form, the attention that they had after that. But just because knowledge engineering isn't as popular as it once was, it doesn't mean it's no longer a valid or useful technique. It can still be a really useful approach for situations where a decision-making model is needed, but good data are hard to come by. So I'm going through like some figures and information that was put together by a consultant, an actuarial consultant, and published in a actuarial journal earlier this year, where he's advocating for the use of knowledge engineering techniques as a means for addressing cyber risk evaluation in the insurance realm. And so the way this process works is get a big group of experts together, either in person or in an online forum. Then you have them brainstorm a full set of variables that should be considered the key indicators for cyber risk. This is just like a really small subset of possible key risk indicators there, just as an example, from a couple different categories, but ultimately there might be way more categories. And then have them estimate, what they consider to be low, medium, or high indicator levels for each key risk indicator. Then we'd have experts list as many inference rules as they can think of, so probably dozens and dozens, that link different combinations of those key risk indicators to some cyber risk model output. So one example from those risk indicators there might be if the timeliness of security updates and checking is high and the response time for cybersecurity management is low, then the expected breach expense cost is low. And then it's the combination of all of the different inference rule outcomes that produces an overall model inference for the company. So we might have 5 inference rules suggesting the breach expense cost is low, 6 that might suggest breach expense cost is not high, 2 that suggest it's medium, and 1 that suggests it's high. And then there's basically a process for averaging the output of these natural language inference rules, and then converting the averaged output to a dollar value of expected cost. And then it also allows for relevant loss experience data to be used as it becomes available, both through back testing and by allowing experts to revise their estimates given new data. So that's So there's still the knowledge acquisition problem that needs to be addressed, though. So how can experts, or how can opinions from experts be gathered while recognizing that experts are busy people who have very little time to contribute to this sort of thing? There's two things we can do. We can use an online collaboration tool that's designed exactly for this purpose. And then, hopefully we can design the process to ensure that experts themselves gain benefits from the process. So the cooperators, we've partnered with a Canadian company that's called PowerNoodle, a bit of a weird name, that's what they're called. They provide online spaces for facilitating group decision processes. And this platform is specifically designed to remove inefficiencies, barriers, and biases that normally plague group decisions. So it's got a modular task structure that ensures participants are all at the same stage of the process at the same time. But each participant can complete their contribution toward the stage at any point within the time frame that's allotted within that stage. And tasks usually take just 10 minutes or less to complete. And then it's anonymous, so the participant list is known to all participants, but the input contributed by each participant is anonymous. So that encourages more open and honest participation. So I've been working with PowerNoodle for several weeks now. And they've done a lot of work getting the online decision space ready for this process, and they've been really great to work with. So the slide here is just a bit of a representation of a timeline for the different steps that I'd be looking to have help having some experts help me work through. Yellow dots there, just we're a short teleconference just to introduce a phase. The whole exercise, it's surrounded on generating inference rules, which are statements like if this is high and that other thing is low, then the incident frequency might expect it to be low. But for the model to work well, right in step one, we need to establish what do we mean by a low incident frequency? How low is low? So we need to have experts go through a step of stating what they would consider to be low and high incident rates, then and what they would consider to be low and high incident costs. And then there'd be some fuzzy logic math to make sure that everyone's input actually counts. So if 42 of 100 experts, I'm being optimistic there, said that one incident every 3 years is a low frequency, and 58 said that one incident every 3 years is a medium frequency, then I wouldn't just conclude that one incident every 3 years is a medium frequency, because that's what the majority said. I would treat one incident every 3 years as being both low and medium frequency, with a 42% degree of truth that it's low and a 58% degree of truth that it's medium. So that ensures that each expert opinion is equally valuable. So once we've established what we mean by frequency and severity, then we need to go through a process of brainstorming as many key characteristics of organizations that could be considered indicators of cyber risk. So it could be, simple things: website traffic, proportion of business conducted online, sensitivity of data they collect about clients, stuff like that. I'd be hoping for a really long list there. And then once we'd have a good list of key risk indicators, we need to go through and pick out the ones that are quantifiable. So website traffic is quantifiable. Sensitivity of data collected is not really quantifiable. And then for each quantifiable indicator, we'd need to then choose an appropriate metric for representing the indicator. And then need to go through the same process for frequency and severity, where we have experts state what they consider to be low or high for each key risk indicator. And once that's done, then we'd have to go through another brainstorming step to come up with as many statements as we could think of that link different levels and combinations of key risk indicators to some expected level of incident frequency and severity. So if this is low, then severity is high. Or if these two are both low, then frequency is not low. Or if this or that are low, then severity is medium, stuff like that. So I'd be looking for a really long list of inference rules there. The more, the better. And then we can start building the expert opinion model, which will run all the inference rules, given a set of key risk indicators, and spit out something like an average result. And then so the idea being that within 6 months' time, we'd have something to share maybe at the next SERENE-RISC workshop. So I just want to, okay, I'm just going to wrap up here. This slide here just goes over the outcome. So inputs, you should be able to get any combination of key cyber risk indicators for an organization, and what the model would output would be an estimated frequency and severity of cyber incidents for the organization. It would be a better estimate if you've got more key risk indicator inputs, and a worse estimate if you've got fewer. Then just really quickly, I'm going to go over, just because it's really important, I just want to go over the benefits of participation. I think, first of all, any participants would gain understanding ability to use the resulting model. I think it'd be an opportunity to work with other experts, develops a community of practice. We'd be involved with an approach to assessing cyber risk from a very different perspective than probably what a lot of you are used to. You could vet your own opinions against other experts. So it's kind of a norm referencing technique. Might prompt some consistency in how we talk about cyber risk, at least within the framework of the exercise. And then, I think it's well aligned with the vision, mission, values of SERENE-RISC Network. So there's how you participate. Send me an email, track me down, find my business card. Hoping to get as many participants as possible. Thanks.